Hey faggots, remember an old movie in the mid-90s called Small Soldiers? I certainly do. Well, I don't think my fans do, since they're possibly 12 or something, or being too young to remember something like this and only watches gameplay and leafy and piratical cringe commentary videos whatever they go on fucking YouTube. Now, in case you faggots don't know, Small Soldiers was a movie that got average reviews upon release in the box office at the time in 1998. The movie was mostly about a group of tourists named the Commandos and the Gorgonites or something stupidly named like that. These two groups are at war with each other, and the Commandos are seen as one of the guys who are actually trying to kill people, and it's up to the Gorgonites to stop them. Really? Toys trying to prevent other toys from taking over the world? I don't know, but to me as an adult, this sounds pretty retarded if you ask me. I mean, to me, it just sounds like a kid's action fanfiction. However, I didn't find the movie bad. I mean, I thought it was actually kind of good, and a good old childhood favourite of mine, even to this day. I mean, it's not great, I mean, some of it tries way too hard to be edgy. In fact, it actually becomes cheesy and cringeworthy to listen to. Even at today's standards. I don't even know, but I think it was a movie around the time that was confused on what it wanted to be. Either a light-hearted comedy or an action movie, with toys killing each other and trying to take control of the fucking Barbie dolls to kill humans. Oh no, I'm not kidding, just take a look at this. However, today we're not talking about the movie though, because we are talking about the game that was exclusively released on the PS1. Now, as far as I know, nobody in history has even attempted to review these games. So this is the main reason why I'm the first to ever review one of them. Or maybe the second, or whatever. Since there is like one review of this game out there though, which is barely viewed. There are around 4 games adapted from the movie, 1 for the PS1 and Game Boy, and 2 for the PC. Now, as far as I'm aware, both the PS1 and the Game Boy version take a different direction from the movie itself, as the movie was set in the real world, whilst the 2 games were both set in fictional worlds with tombs and military bases. Now, when it comes to PS1 games, not many people have ever heard of this game, and I only remember playing this game around my older cousin's house as a kid, and it was pretty fun at the time. I guess as this game debuted, this was the only Small Soldiers game that got popular in sales in 1998 in the PS1 market, which means that it was only one of these products that were popular around the time, and I can understand why. As far as Small Soldiers games go, we had a side-scroller for the Game Boy, Squad Commander, which was a real-time strategy game, which is kind of a Warcraft and a Starcraft knockoff around the time. Globotech Design Lab, which was more of a strategy/action game, which you could create your own toys to fight other toys by using presets from people characters such as arms and legs, all that kind of shit. And we got the PS1 game, which was a third-person shooter developed by DICE Los Angeles and published by DreamWorks Interactive, and it's pretty sad that Interactive are now defunct as of today. It takes place in the fictional world of destruction, and it's one of the best Small Soldiers games out there, since 3 of the others are just average. It's pretty much what you would get if Tomb Raider fucked Quake and Doom up the arse and had the graphics of Soul Reaver, even though that game came out a year after. I mean, this game did come out around the time when developers were making Tomb Raider knockoffs with shitty tank controls that I just cannot fucking stand to this day. And it just makes you look like you got the worst case of OCD by stimming to high hell to this point, while all you're doing is controlling a character that can't walk properly. However, this game's controls aren't that bad, believe it or not, since it does control a lot like games like Die Hard Trilogy, Duke Nukem Time to Kill, and fucking Siphon Filter, with Strife controls. With third-person shooters around the time, they did not sidestep like in your typical Tomb Raider game, which also came out a year after. And also, I'm going to be mentioning this continually throughout this review, as the game itself is pretty ahead of its time. This game was pretty fucking badass for a kid's game, with a cool loading screen, the skull bat, and the dark gritty tone the game itself had. Keep in mind that some of the footage I gathered was something that I recorded off the PSX emulator, since the graphics might look a little bit cleaned out and sharp, and kind of glitched at times, since, well, this is being emulated, so not everything in the PS1 emulation is going to work perfectly, which I do wish that the guys who are behind ePSXE can fix this as soon as possible, since sometimes it does bother me. Oh, and also my ROM copy was in German. And I also downloaded it for free instead of buying a retail copy that would be hard to find anyway, so fuck you, sue me, you little shit. We start with a typical cheesy 90s CGI cutscene as one of the heads of the commanders named Chip Hazard giving a speech on how they would get rid of the Gorgonites. Now, looking at this today, it kind of tells me that this is some sort of social commentary on Nazi Germany in World War II. As the way it's presented, it actually looks like the commanders are trying to wipe out the fucking Gorgonites like the fucking Jews they are. I mean, Chip Hazard himself is giving his speech to his men, like he's fucking Adolf Hitler. Or, however, in this day and age, should I possibly pretend that the Gorgonites are the Mexicans and the Muslims, which would pretty much make sense in this day and age? Damn it, I want to play as Trump. Damn it, I didn't sign up to play as a fucking Democrat, and since I have the German version, it actually sounds a lot more funnier and a lot more fitting with the dub itself. This is the German dub of the cutscene of the game right here.
In jeder an jedem Tag nur zu denken an Deutschland, an Volk und an Reich, an unsere deutsche Nation. Unser deutsches Volk Sieg heil! 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 Sieg heil!
The game consists of mostly an action third-person shooter as you battle the commandos in 14 levels, ranging from your dark Gorgon tombs being invaded to crashing into an enemy base. Later on in the game, you play as Archer, who can rapidly fire his crossbow like a fucking machine gun. Because that makes total fucking sense, right? I mean, it's just like every other game in the 90s. It's fast-paced, you collect keycards to open doors and find secrets, and all that kind of good shit that is just running and gunning like the good old days. Just like in the previous game I reviewed, Chasm the Rift, released in 1997 for DOS. You can also gather different types of ammo for your crossbows, such as some toxic balls that bounce off walls, and every other surface it bounces off of. A blue star that is sometimes flammable to other enemies and can also auto-aim at the enemy without manually aiming or moving, which is also something that Tomb Raider knockoffs were made like back in the day, which is a big issue by today's standards. And we got the most powerful ammo type being the rockets, or most likely the explosive fireballs. And I don't think the game explains what these ammo types are. I mean, I don't know why, but it just seems like some of the ammo you fire is auto-aimed, and sometimes it's not. I mean, the toxic ammo would be a good example. I mean, it may be powerful, but goddamn, it wouldn't bloody auto-aim. Second of all, you have your powers that you can pick up like green mines, that create green mist to it for some reason, orange grenades that look like stones, and also thunder lightning bombs that kill all the enemies in your way, which are mostly just thunderclouds more likely, which is kind of useful when going against a flock of enemies. You can also pick up these talisman things that are either in secret areas or out in the open to summon your friends to fight and aid you in your battle with the Gorgonites, such as Slamfist and Insomniac, who has a face ripped off, exposing his flesh. Pretty friendly for a kids game, right guys? It was a shame that we didn't get to play as the others, since they did have some good combo moves, which was kind of a bummer if you ask me. I mean, this actually reminds me of a series called Overlord, which was a game that was a combination of hack and slash and strategy, which also allowed you to summon allies and fight your foes, which was released 9 years after its time, and also the Dark Souls series as well. If that's being ahead of its time, then I don't know what is. Also, it's a shame that you can only summon one Gorgonite, as you would fight against commandos, as you would only get one different Gorgonite each level. But I guess the game ain't that hard unless you actually put the shit on hard mode, if you want an actual challenge. Also, you might notice that not all the Gorgonites and commandos in the movie are in this movie adaptation, and instead you only fight a few commandos, and also their robots and spawn pad, and you got Stench and Nibble for the Gorgonites. You can also circle strafe enemies at times, just like any other game at the time, and sometimes the death animations are kind of brutal. And I don't mean as brutal as something like a snuff film, or some extreme horror film, or anime, or guru manga, or something, or whatever. I mean, for a T-rated game, they got away with some violent stuff, such as shooting an enemy to the point when an enemy is set on fire whilst he burns to death, and also blowing a dude's arm and leg off, which was actually pretty cool. And that was only for one enemy, only being the black dude, who was in the Commando army, which is reminiscent of the Nazi army. And for some reason, he's black? I mean, what's it supposed to be? The lost prequel to Iron Sky when a black guy becomes a Nazi white guy? I mean, what the buck fucking clucking, nigga? Honestly, I really can't remember much of what the names actually were. And also, later on in the game, you can control turrets that look like a penis, or a phallus or whatever, that can fire rockets at flying ships that 360 every time you shoot them. And also the walking mechs that are built in with a machine gun and rockets, which are pretty fucking fun to control, as you can just cleanse the enemies that are just standing in your way, as you can just blow them up with one shot, or blow a ton of enemies as well, shooting at the enemies, as well as shooting at enemies who are using turrets and walking mechs themselves, which is always fucking satisfying. Now, the aiming can be a bit buggy at times, whilst trying to shoot down turrets and aim at your opponent without getting killed. I mean, to be fair, this was an era when most console games couldn't aim and move at the same time, as console games could today. Instead, they would only let you aim with R1 whilst restricting the ability to move so you can dodge projectiles and attacks. The controls are okay to say the least. I mean, if they actually didn't have strafing controls, then we would end up with shitty control. I mean, there isn't much I can talk about when it comes to controls, since for PS1 standards, they're pretty average, except from the jumping, and the aiming can be a little clunky, especially when you're trying to shoot an enemy whilst you auto-aim at your allies, or because your auto-aim was kind of shit, and they just wouldn't get out of the fucking way. Now, for a PS1 game in the late 90s, the graphics and textures and lighting are actually pretty good, especially with the symbolism on the walls and the dark atmosphere and they do set the tone for the mood for the theme it's going for, whilst you explore the dark chambers and the dark corridors. I mean, it's almost like Soul Reaver graphics were used before Soul Reaver was released back in 1999. Now, the character polygons and animation are good for a game made in 1998. Sometimes in N64 games like Turok 1, 2, and 3, you normally get low animation frame rate, which is kind of hard to look at to this day. And back then, it was because of the system's limitations. I mean, it's not great by any means, but it gets the job done. I mean, same thing goes with the sounds of the enemies, like Chip has it being voiced by Tommy Lee Jones, which was also kind of cool, as well as the rest of the cast emulating the voice of the characters in the film. And the sound of the game is pretty good itself, but some of the sound can be quite questionable. I mean, I don't know why, but every time you pick up an item, it makes a sound that is very reminiscent of a dog barking. I mean, I don't know why they made it sound like this, but I guess that was a weird choice by the creators, I guess. Here, take a listen.
A secret.
We also got a few good qualities in the sound right here, such as the soundtrack itself being composed by Michael Giacchino, I think that's how you say his name, who is a famous composer who is known for being the composer of the Jurassic Park movies and the Call of Duty games, Doctor Strange and Rogue One. Oh, so I guess he's not some guy that's not notable for doing anything else at all, which is normally what I get when it comes to people who worked on obscure games who don't even have fucking Wikipedia pages, or are just not well-known people in general to the point that they switched to the fucking porn industry instead, which is what I'm assuming. Now, the soundtrack was the bonus of the game, so the creators to play on both console and computer as well, so you can listen and rip the soundtrack off that. However, some of the tracks were corrupted due to a lack of cleanup, and the music for most of the levels were actually available, and this comes to when you have to meet the deadline for the film's release, as well as the game as of itself. I mean, it is a shame that you cannot play the music during the game whilst it's emulated, but I will say, at least it kind of has a good atmosphere, even with the music off anyway. So I don't know about this shite. Now, I have no idea what the fuck these chances are supposed to be, but goddamn, are they fucking weird. I don't know why they do this dance, nor do I even think they have lead. Oh, there they are. I mean, sometimes you hear them chant something like Hop on TC, whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. Is that some sort of ritual that they go like, or something like that? I mean, on the fucking colored stone was to give you the key to the next colored door. Now, as many games in the PS1 had black fog, kind of annoying when an enemy shoots at you from a distance, where you cannot even fucking see him. And I have no idea why they put the black fog draw distance into these types of games. I think it was possibly the limitations for the console, I guess. I mean, Crash Bandicoot didn't even have that black fog draw distance, except from only the dark areas like tombs when it actually fits in with the atmosphere and the environment, so I'm guessing that was no excuse for shitty draw distance when a game like Crash Bandicoot, a game from 1996, has better draw distance than any of the PS1 games out there, since it was one of the notable PS1 games to push the limits of the engine and the console itself. So I don't know why the fuck even there was draw distance in most PS1 games in the first place. As someone who isn't an expert when it comes to game engines refurbished for consoles, I can't really comment much about the draw distance in general. At times when you have the objective screen, before you start a level, it always tells you what needs to be done. And to some players, this can be a problem since you can never go back to the screen when your gameplay is paused. I mean, the way that the objectives themselves are presented seem cringeworthy to read. I mean, it's like it's trying way too hard to be hit with the kids and it's doing an awkward job to do so. I mean, it's pretty awkward to read this at this very day. Also, I wouldn't really bother reading the objectives, to be honest though, since they seem to be accomplished easily by just running and gunning anyone in your path, as well as just blowing up some equipment here and there, whilst you just have your brain switched off and into retard mode without any strategy or point to your objective to accomplish your victory for this mission. I know it's trying to have a story, but this game doesn't really explain much in terms of story, as other games normally do. Also, this was one of these games that actually allowed you to enter passwords and also get to a level you left off when you didn't have a memory card at the time, or if you were just too much of a retard to save your game. Yeah, remember when games actually let you enter passwords in order to get to a certain level? Man, I miss those times. It kind of sucks nowadays that the kind of function doesn't even exist in games these days anymore. But yet again, you do have auto-saves nowadays, and they don't take as much data with storage devices nowadays anyway. I mean, not as much as the PS1 and the PS2 memory cards that were only 5 to 10 megabytes big. It does get kind of repetitive at times without anything new, from well shoot these enemies, blow these computers and spaceships up, and kill the boss, making it kind of boring to keep on playing. I know most 90s first-person shooters are repetitive, but at least they actually brought something new and something actually strategic and fun and new to the table. The level design itself is kind of average, to say the least. I mean, at least some levels you would notice that the platforming can be hard on certain slopes, which make it hard to grab onto corners and ledges as well, as if you were on one part of the level, you would just fall right through it due to some glitch that doesn't even make the floor stable. I mean, it doesn't stand out for most of the time, but goddamn, it's so fucking annoying to start from a checkpoint all over again. Also, the level design kinda sucks at times, since when you explore one level enough, you'll find out that the mapping is very symmetrical. And that isn't really a creative thing, to be honest, since it just looks like half of one chunk of geometry was duplicated to make it into a room without effort, and it makes it seem like the developers just got lazy and just said, fuck it, and just made the room without any effort. Especially when you're exploring the first two levels. I mean, at one time you can kill a certain enemy, or collect all keycards before the giant portal, which looks like a vagina, opens up, so you can jump into it. Yeah. The AI can sometimes be fucking autistic, due to the enemies walking into walls, or your abortions that you just summoned are doing the glitch dance whilst trying to oppose the enemy. I mean, take a good look at this. Well, good job then, mate. You tried to jump onto the turret with me, yet you fall onto the ground. Retard. Even the camera itself is autistic, but it's not as bad as the fucking AI at times. I mean, I know I seem like a nitpicker, but what the fuck is up with the names? I mean, they seem like the most generically named characters I have ever seen. I mean, the design itself is good and everything, but my god, the fucking names are just ranging from completely fucking generic to completely retarded. Examples would be naming your characters Slamfist, Archer, Punch It, and Scratch It, Stench and Nibble on your pee-pee. Also, there's something else that leads to a few questions, being that you would be fighting Chip Hazard as an enemy throughout the game, yet you fight him whilst he's in some sort of mech suit, whilst he's way more powerful than you, as the final boss, which already doesn't make any fucking sense. I mean, since it never explains why he's an enemy in the game, I would say that he made clones of himself in a cloning machine, just to go against the Gorgonites. And I don't know why he had to make clones of himself, but whatever. Which I can see Oath would be good getting a bone over, since cloning is his type of fetish. Fighting Chip is kind of a pain in the ass, since you have to strafe in order to shoot him. If you have one of these PS1 controls with only 2 shoulder buttons, then I feel sorry for you, because you have to circle and strafe this motherfucker. Since he circle strafes you, make it harder to aim and shoot him, which is already a fucking pain in the ass. Which raises another question. Why the fuck don't we get to play as Chip Hazard against the Gorgonites in another campaign that's 14 levels long? I mean, that would have been cool to do, since you can play as him in multiplayer, but for some reason they decided to only stick with Archer, and I'm guessing they did that just to meet the deadline of the film's release. I mean, the film came out like what, like 97, 98 or something like that though, I don't fucking know. I mean, the game itself has a lot of fucking potential, and I mean a fucking lot, which I will get to later, but I mean, the game itself only has 14 levels, which isn't even enough for gameplay time for a retail release, since the levels themselves seem kind of short. And I just beat the game in one day and a few hours. The last boss battle is kind of meh. I mean, it's not bad by all means. I mean, I will say it was kind of fun kicking his ass as a kid, and also as a fully grown neckbeard fat fuck adult in his 20s. Around today's standards, it does seem to get kind of generic, and around the final round, it's like trying to squash a fly, whilst he flies around in his mech suit and shoots at you, since the hit detection is kind of shit. It's not bad, but it really could have been a whole lot better as a boss fight for a game in the late 90s, at least. And once you complete it, it doesn't feel like you've achieved anything, since you don't really unlock anything at the end of the game after the credits stop rolling. The 2-player has a split screen mode, which I doubt anyone plays anymore nowadays. That's only fun if you've got a mate to play with, since you get to in the maps listed in this screenshot, as you can select either Archer or Chip Hazard. The multiplayer is just like the single player, well, sort of, as you shoot each other with turrets, mech war machines, whilst Archer can spawn his allies, as well as Chip can spawn his allies, such as enemies you battled before. And again, it would be cool to play as the rest of the Gorgonites, as well as the commandos, and use their abilities and attacks and charge patterns, and imagine how it would turn out as an improvement on the multiplayer. Apparently the developers didn't do that, which is kind of a bummer if you ask me. I thought the multiplayer deathmatch was kind of fun back in the day, but at least it could add in some extra characters to control, because it's something to make the multiplayer better. As you can see by the game itself and its relevance, it's lost potential, since the game does prove that it has potential and it's not focusing on the plot of the movie for the sake of a quick cash grab, just like every other movie adaptation out there. This is set in the fictional world where there's actually potential to make a sequel out of this, but it never even got one. The game is around average to me, and honestly, I would definitely play it again, but only when I actually feel like doing so. If you can get this game around a ridiculously cheap price on Amazon, then I guess it's worth the money. But however, if it's just expensive, just like every other retro game on Amazon out there, then I'll just say fuck it and just download the ROM for it instead on a PS1 emulation site. Since I can say the game is nowhere as good as other games on the market, but that doesn't mean that this is still an underrated classic, which has faded into obscurity into the PS1 library when time went on. It's kind of a gem that's kind of great, but has a load of things that I could have done better, despite it being an average game. I would have to give this game a 7 out of 10, you know, just like I did with Doom, the reboot. It's kind of like Doom 2016 if you think about it, since both of them are fun to play and have short campaigns and more potential to be good. And if this game got at least a sequel, then that would be fucking awesome. If somebody could at least remake this game or even reboot it into a violent, gory, third-person shooter with the controls that we use today, such as a cross between Gears of War 4 and fucking Darksiders, whilst aiming and shooting whilst moving, glory kills, finishing moves, well, you know, kind of like the 5th season of Samurai Jack, except it's way more gory and has more content than the 5th season ever had. Fast-paced action, more platforming that actually works, melee combat, controllable allies to attack, use range attacks, and reach small places that you couldn't normally reach by possessing your organization and all that shit, like your fucking monsters and fucking creatures and all that shit. Duke Nukem kick, summon your allies from either fountains, like an overlord by the tokens you gathered, carry a load of guns, melee weapons, tokens at a time, just like in good FPS games, grenade tossing, and also chip hazard campaign, unlockable mods, cheat codes, and also the power to take possession of other enemies. Small soldiers reloaded. Make it happen, fuckers. Either get the rights from DreamWorks and maybe make this into an internet project and make this into a game. It would be cool if that would happen, but however, not many people know about this game's existence, nor do they know of the movie itself, so I doubt this would get a reboot with the love and care for the group of developers on the internet. But however, this could get a reboot someday, and at least could be made by somebody or some people who have played the original PS1 game, and it could turn into a PC exclusive, or even something to download on the Xbox or PlayStation Store, because that would be a good premise for a game that had potential to be a great game. Make it happen, motherfuckers. This has been Cheesy with the Super 79, and I will see you fucking nerds in the near future.
Stay frosty and keep it weird. Pow! Credit sequence now.